A graduation dinner turned cruel. So I finally spoke up. I went out to dinner tonight with a few friends after work. Nothing fancy, just one of those popular local restaurants with an outdoor patio that gets crowded during warm evenings. It was the kind of place where everyone seemed to be celebrating something. Families were taking pictures, couples were sharing appetizers, servers were rushing around trying to keep up with the dinner rush, and there was this constant mix of laughter and conversation filling the air. It honestly felt like a really happy atmosphere. A lot of the tables around us were clearly celebrating graduations. You could spot bouquets of flowers, gift bags sitting beside chairs, proud parents taking endless photos, and teenagers dressed up nicer than usual because it was obviously a special night for them. That's when I noticed this girl sitting a few tables away from us. She looked maybe 17 or 18, probably just graduated high school that same day. She was sitting with what I assumed was her family, parents, maybe grandparents, and a couple of friends around her age. They were all smiling, taking photos together, passing phones around the table to look at pictures from the ceremony. She looked genuinely happy. She was wearing this really pretty dark blue sleeveless dress with an open back. Nothing overly revealing or attention-seeking. Just a normal graduation dinner outfit for a warm evening. And yes, if you happen to notice, she had some acne on her upper back and shoulders. But honestly, it was the kind of thing most people either wouldn't notice or wouldn't care about for more than half a second. She looked completely normal. Human. A teenager dealing with skin issues during one of the most stressful years of her life. At the time, nobody seemed to think anything of it. Then another family got seated nearby. There was a young guy with them, probably early 20s. Almost immediately, it became apparent he had some sort of intellectual or developmental disability. He was speaking loudly, interrupting people, blurting things out impulsively, and his parents had this exhausted, practiced way of responding to him that suggested they were used to managing uncomfortable situations in public. At first, nothing seemed wrong. He was a little loud, sure, but restaurants are loud anyway. Nobody was paying much attention. Then out of nowhere, he looked directly at the girl and pointed at her. Not subtle pointing either. Fully extended arm. And loudly, loud enough that nearby conversations instantly stopped, he said. "Why does your back look like that? You have pimples all over you. That's disgusting." The entire patio went silent. I'm not exaggerating. It was one of those painfully awkward moments where you physically feel the energy shift around you. Silverware stopped clinking. People froze mid-conversation. Even servers passing by looked over. The girl's smile disappeared immediately. She looked completely caught off guard, like she genuinely couldn't process that someone had just said that to her in front of dozens of strangers. Nobody at her table responded. Honestly, I think they were probably just shocked. But what stunned me even more was that nobody at his table immediately shut it down either. His parents kind of gave awkward little laughs and started apologizing vaguely in that embarrassed, passive way people do when they want a situation to disappear without actually confronting it. I figured that would be the end of it. An uncomfortable moment, sure, but hopefully everyone would move on. Then the guy kept talking. People are eating. Nobody wants to look at that while they eat. I remember physically feeling my stomach drop when he said that. Because now it wasn't just a rude impulsive comment. He was actively humiliating her. The girl quietly pushed her chair back and excused herself to the restroom. Nobody said anything as she walked away. Her family just looked devastated for her. And honestly, I think everyone else in the restaurant felt the same way. A few minutes later, she came back. But she wasn't wearing the dress normally anymore. She had pulled on this oversized gray sweatshirt that completely covered her shoulders and back. Outside. In humid 80-degree weather. That moment honestly upset me more than anything else that happened the entire night. You could tell she had probably spent hours getting ready for graduation dinner. Hair done, makeup done, carefully choosing a dress she felt pretty in. And now suddenly she was sitting there hiding herself because one stranger decided to publicly shame her. What made it even harder to watch was how hard she was trying to act normal afterward. She smiled during photos. She nodded during conversations. But she barely looked up from the table. At that point, I expected the parents to finally step in firmly with their son. But instead, they mostly just kept apologizing for him without actually stopping him. And somehow, unbelievably, the comments continued. Every few minutes he'd say something else loudly enough for surrounding tables to hear. How do you even let acne get that bad? That's really unhygienic. I'm serious, I can't eat looking at that. Each comment chipped away at the atmosphere more and more. You could literally feel people around the patio getting tense. Some people looked uncomfortable. Some looked angry. Some deliberately avoided eye contact because they didn't want to get involved. Meanwhile, the girl just stared at the table in silence. What frustrated me most was that everyone suddenly seemed expected to prioritize the comfort of the parents instead of the girl who was actually being humiliated. And then the mother said something that honestly made my jaw drop. She looked at the girl and said, "Believe it or not, this usually means he likes you." I remember just staring at her thinking, are you serious right now? Because somehow the situation had turned into everyone comforting them while this poor girl sat there trying not to cry at her own graduation dinner. At one point, another table got up and walked inside abruptly. They were gone for several minutes before returning. I'm almost positive they complained to the restaurant staff. But the restaurant was packed, servers were overwhelmed, and nothing immediately happened. My own friends kept telling me to stay out of it. One whispered, "Don't make this worse." Another said, "It's not your business." And logically, I understood what they meant. Nobody wants public conflict at dinner. Nobody wants to escalate a situation involving someone with a disability because it becomes socially complicated very quickly. But at the same time, I couldn't stop thinking about that girl sitting there sweating in a sweatshirt because a stranger destroyed her confidence in front of an entire patio full of people. And what bothered me even more was the silence. There's this weird social phenomenon where once nobody says anything, everyone else becomes even less likely to speak up. People convince themselves it's not their place. They assume someone else will handle it. Meanwhile, the person being humiliated just sits there alone in it. I kept thinking, if I were that girl, wouldn't the silence almost hurt as much as the comments? Because silence can feel like agreement. Another few minutes passed. Then the guy loudly said something again about how gross her skin was. That was the moment I finally decided I couldn't just sit there anymore. I got up from my table and walked over. I wasn't trying to start a fight. I wasn't angry in the yelling sense. Honestly, I was nervous. But I calmly said something along the lines of, "Hey, this is making everyone really uncomfortable. I understand he may not mean harm, but at this point somebody really needs to step in because this has gone too far." The parents immediately started apologizing to me. Again. But even then, they still didn't actually correct his behavior or remove him from the situation. It was like they wanted endless understanding from everyone else while refusing to set any boundaries themselves. I just went back to my table afterward. And honestly, for a few seconds, I wondered if maybe my friends were right. The entire patio felt even quieter now. Nobody looked directly at anyone. It was that awful kind of tension where everybody is pretending to focus on their meals while secretly listening to everything happening around them. A little while later, restaurant staff finally came over and moved the family with the son to another section of the patio. Even then, though, the parents seemed irritated about it. I overheard the father saying their son wasn't trying to be malicious and that people were being unfair because he can't help it. And honestly, maybe he truly didn't understand the impact of what he was saying. Maybe he genuinely wasn't trying to be cruel. But intent doesn't magically erase harm. The girl was still humiliated. Her graduation dinner was still ruined. And the parents had multiple opportunities to step in compassionately and redirect the situation before it escalated that far. Instead, they mostly expected everyone else to tolerate it indefinitely. After the family got moved, the atmosphere slowly started returning to normal. Conversations picked back up. People started laughing again. But the girl still kept the sweatshirt on. That image has honestly stayed stuck in my head all night. Not the comments. Not the argument. Just the sweatshirt. Because it represented the exact moment someone stopped feeling comfortable in their own skin. After dinner, though, my friends told me they thought I handled it badly. They said I embarrassed our table. One friend told me it wasn't my place to interfere in someone else's family issue. Another said speaking up probably made the girl feel even more singled out because now even more attention was on the situation. And now hours later, I keep replaying the whole thing in my head wondering if they're right. Part of me worries maybe I did make things worse. Maybe the better thing would have been quietly finding a manager instead. Maybe speaking publicly added more tension to an already horrible situation. But another part of me keeps thinking about how everybody else stayed silent while this girl got publicly humiliated over something completely normal and harmless. And honestly, I think if I were in her position, I'd rather know at least one person thought what was happening was wrong. Because when nobody says anything, it can start to feel like everyone agrees. And I don't think anyone deserves to feel that alone on one of the happiest nights of their life. Subscribe for more.